awesome. Steve, I'm not talking to you because you don't want me to preach. So. How can I cope with this? I can't be heckled by you, Steve. Cool, how's everyone doing? Is everyone okay? Yeah. Is everyone okay? Yeah. Oh, that's a Welsh lost sort of attitude, that is. I'm so sorry. Right, Michaela, honestly, I'm really... Because I'm preaching on Do Not Judge today, and you're making it really difficult. Seriously. I mean, man alive, this is difficult. This is great. We're going to have a great time. What I would like to say is that today everything comes from a heart of love as much as I can. We're going to be looking at, as I've said, about do not judge, and this is obviously going to be quite a practical sermon, something that we're going to take right from what Jesus said. So this is a chance for us to really look at ourselves. In fact, have you ever been shopping? Maybe in a store, no, not online, and you're in a store and there's just no mirrors anywhere. And it's probably, Neil know, one of my biggest bugbears. When I try on a t-shirt or a jumper, I want to know what it flipping looks like. I'm wandering around the shop with some stock on going, is there anywhere I can see what I actually look like in this jumper? Because when I look down, I look great. And so often when I look in the mirror, not so much. It doesn't suit me, it's not the right fit. And it does my head in. And so what we're going to be in this moment is getting an opportunity to look at ourselves, stand and look at ourselves in a mirror and really test and see what our lives are like, really test and see what our attitudes are, really test and see how we are reacting and responding to other people. Okay? Does that sound fair? Does that sound okay? Cool. Now, today we're going to be reading from Matthew 7. If you haven't been here before, we're doing our sermon on the greatest sermon ever. So it's looking at Jesus' sermon as he sat or stood on the Mount of Olives and spoke to a multitude of people. We're going through it week by week. A recap, last week we looked at possessions, about earthly possessions and maintaining a heavenly treasure. That's the word I was looking for, heavenly treasure. The week before that, we were looking at humility and spiritual things. Simon took us through humility within prayer and humility within fasting. What is our heart posture and our heart position? Then Noreen showed us about being counter-culture, living in counter-cultural way, love for your enemies, forgiving those who persecute you. Then I looked at a God of covenant. God is a God of covenant. He does not give up on his covenant, and he wants us to be people who are faithful, who let our yes be yes and our no be no. And then before that I spoke about being salt and light, about standing out, being different from our environment. So that's sort of what we've been looking at. And today I'm going to be looking at the topic of judgment. So, a little bit of context about the writer and the book. The book is the Gospel of Matthew. It was written by Matthew, well, no points there. And basically, Matthew was a Jew. Okay, Matthew was a Jew, converted to Christianity. He was possibly a teacher based on his knowledge of the Old Testament law. He uses a lot of quotes from the Old Testament. Another reason he does that is because he's writing to a Jewish audience, either Jewish people who have become Christians or people who are just Jewish and haven't converted to Christianity yet. They are just Jews. Okay, so he's writing to people who know the Old Testament and specifically the Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those 5 books of the Bible really, really well. They know those books really, really well. So he's writing to these people, and so he uses a lot of Old Testament writing, a lot of Old Testament text to prove that Jesus is the coming Messiah that all these Jews are still waiting for, right? Matthew's going, he's been and he's gone. You missed him, but you can still have faith in him. So that's what Matthew is writing to, and of course as he's writing to Jews, he's writing to a highly, highly religious people. A highly religious people who want you to live a certain way, tick boxes, 613 Jewish laws that people had to follow. It was all about how you looked, how you responded, the words you used, all that sort of stuff, rather than a heart position and a faithfulness before God, right? So the thing is, what I'm going to ask us to do is I'm going to ask us to do something a little bit silly, a little bit crazy. Okay? Nia's going, ugh. Can we all stand up for me? Because I was thinking about what our religiosity is in church. What's our religiosity today? It's not about what clothes we wear, it's not about the words we speak. It's the seats we sit in. So I'm going to ask you to all move seats. Go and sit in the seat you haven't sat in before. Sit in a different place. If you have a medical reason for sitting where you're sitting, you can stay seated. I'm not harsh. But if you are able and physically willing, I'm asking you to go and change seats from where you're sitting. Where you Simon's in the suit. Alfie, I love it. Front row. Beautiful. Well done, because right, you can take your seats. That's it. Bed in for the night. Bed in. I say the night, the afternoon. That's fine. So what I'm looking at is the fact that we are so religious, and sometimes we go, those Pharisees were bad people. They were religious, weren't they? They always did the same, and they demanded people. We've got the same things. They're just different. But we still have religiosity because we're humans. We have the same character issues where we want the same things done in the same way. You know, if I was to preach first and sing second, what would we do? Yeah, Linda's shaking her head. She's in shock. Do we have any medical assistants for Linda here? This is just unbelievable. Assistants. I don't know why my voice is not. It's like coming out, hi, it's speaking like this. Because honestly, I'm fine. So what I want to look at is the fact that Matthew is speaking to a highly religious society which is saying, we have to do things like this. You have to do things like this. And this is how we do things, and you aren't doing it right, and you aren't living right, and you're saying the wrong words, and you're dressed in the wrong way. And Jesus says, I'm not having that. I'm going to get them to stand up and move seats. Metaphorically. So Jesus goes through, we're going to read it pretty much verse by verse and pick out what Jesus is really saying and how we can relate it to our daily lives. Does that sound okay? How does church look from a different viewpoint? Isn't it bizarre? The whole new world. Anyway, so, great. Fantastic. Steve, you're allowed to do these, very excited. So, Matthew 7, verse 1. Matthew 7, verse 1 says this. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. Jesus starts slowly. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So just think, there is a highly judgmental, highly religious Jewish people, led by the more highly religious Jewish leaders, and Jesus goes, the amount you judge other people, you'll be judged yourself. Now, straight away, that's going to strike a nerve with the Jewish leaders, right? Because all of a sudden they're going, oh, wow. See, that's funny, because I thought I had the right to judge people, but I didn't think I was being judged myself. I know the Bible. They used to dress in these huge robes, and they had these prayer tassels, and the leaders of the religious law used to have these huge prayer tassels. They used to have prayer boxes strapped to their head to prove how high and mighty and pious they were. That's what they used to live like. And all of a sudden, Jesus is saying, oh, by the way, you're being judged by the same standard too. And all of a sudden, they've got this moment where they have to look at themselves in the mirror and think, oh, okay, well, if I'm judging that person, and I'm judging the Gentiles, and I'm judging those people over there by this much, how much is being looked back upon me? Now, some of them would have ultimately just gone, well, I'm fine, I'm holy, I'm religious, and that's great. But I wonder if some of them went, wow, okay, Jesus, that's pretty strong, but I hear you. And can I ask you, can we have that same response? Jesus, that's pretty strong, but I hear you. I hear what you're saying, that because I'm a church leader and I speak some Sundays and I get to lead worship and I do all these things and that's great, but when that person walks down the street dressed in a silly way, or that person says those words, or those friends of mine that say they're Christians go out and live in a certain way, how kind am I in judging them? How kind are you in judging that person down the road? How genuine are we, or are we so quick to go, look at them? And I say that hypothetically because in this area, specifically on this estate, in this valley, in this culture, saying, oh, look at them, comes naturally. I don't think I'm stepping out of line by saying that. Oh, look at, I heard, did you hear that? And he said that about that, and I didn't. Happens quickly and it happens naturally. And we have to catch these things and recognize we do it so naturally. Our natural tendency is to judge others. But don't we clothe it well? I'll pray for that person. I'll pray for them because they're really struggling right now. Is it us being actually wanting to pray for them, or is it us saying, I'm judging them? It's an interesting question. And so in this way it says, do not be judged, for you too will be judged. It's talking about two things. It could be talking about human judgment. You judge others, humans will judge you back. That's fairly standard. What's probably more scary is when we look at God's judgment. The amount you judge someone else, God will look at you the same. And I wasn't sure about this theologically. And I was thinking, well, does God, if God is a faithful judge and a fair judge, can he judge me by the standard I judge others? Because I'm a broken human, I've got an excuse. But there's biblical precedent for this. In Galatians 6:7, it says a man reaps what he sows. There is a biblical precedent. Now the world has painted it as karma, it's called it karma, but we know that actually is a biblical precedent. You reap what you sow. But even more scary potentially is in Matthew 6:15, which we, in fact, Simon looked at, I think it was, a couple of weeks ago. And it says this, but if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive you. So there is precedent, thank you. There is precedent that God treats us as we treat others. So we've got to be really careful how we judge other people, because I know I stand in righteousness. I know that. I know God has declared me righteous. And I know that although I live unrighteously, God still loves me and he forgives me. But I have to understand that my actions have consequences, earthly and spiritually. And sometimes we're happy to accept the earthly consequence. Oh, I lied and someone found out, so I broke trust. Oh, I stole and so I got caught. You know, those sort of things. But we have to recognize there is a spiritual consequence to an earthly action. A spiritual consequence to an earthly action. And so we have to be prepared to go, am I ready for God to judge me in the standard that I judge others? Just think about that question. How much judgment would you receive from God if he judged you like you judge others? Potentially that's a good way to think, or am I judgmental? Because sometimes we can skip over, but if we truly believe that God's going to judge me in a similar vein or with a similar standard, where am I going to lie? Where am I going to land? When the dust settles, how am I going to stand before God? Because here's the thing, judgment is a heart position or a posture. Being judgmental or judgment is a silent position of power over an unsuspecting person, right? It's a heart thing. Your heart is saying, I'm better than you. That's what judgment is. I could have done that better. I live better. I speak better. I am better. That's what judgment is. So we have to understand that if judgment is a heart issue, you're not always going to hear it. Some go, I'm not judgmental. I don't say things about people. I don't point the finger. I don't do that. It's a heart position. So you can say nothing, and if you think you're above someone else, if you think you're higher than someone else, if you think someone else should be doing your dirty dishes, then you're a judgmental person. Or you have judgment in your heart, at least. And so we have to recognize, where's my heart position? Not always what's coming out here would reveal everything that's going in here now. I know I've preached before about the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Yes. But judgment in itself is a heart position that sometimes we're good at hiding. Sometimes we're really good at hiding it. It's your heart telling your head that you're more powerful, more knowledgeable, more fashionable, more spiritual, more important than another one, and here's the important factor, another one of God's creation. You're saying, oh, God created me and he created you, but he created me better than you. Or I've done better with what God created in me than what he created in you. No. God created that person and loves that person. And yes, they may have been making some bad decisions about what they say or what they do or how they live, but we do not have a right to judge. We have a right to love and a right to care and a right to carefully gather and look after. And that is why my job is fairly difficult. Because every day I'm hoping and I'm looking to lead people, but in a way that I keep my heart in a sensitive, soft place. So before you say, oh, would it be nice to be pastor, I'm being judged as well. So verse 3. So Jesus has unpacked this main issue. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So now Jesus has given you a heart issue, and now he says he's probably getting some blank faces, much like I'm getting now. And I'm joking. and he's getting blank faces from these people. So he goes, I'm going to take a heart issue and I'm going to make it really blatant. I'm going to take it from a 1 to a 10 really quickly. And so he creates this physical issue that's revealed a heart issue, okay? So he's mirroring what he said in verses 1 and 2 with what he's about to say here in a story where people can go, oh, I get it now, right? So people go, I get it now. So if you're still going, this is for you. This is for you, and this is a practical picture of what judgment looks like. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye or your friend's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Now, we don't laugh at that, but that is a hysterical overstatement by Jesus to a mass crowd. There would have been high laughter at that point because he is being so ridiculous. A, how do you have a plank in your eye anyway? But B, what a ridiculous thing that someone with a speck in their own eye, in someone else's eye, a plank in their own eye, can judge someone else with a speck. How ridiculous, how obscene. And Jesus is about to go, don't laugh too quickly, because a lot of you do it, and a lot of you do it well. So verse 4, how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? Calm down, Jesus. You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. He's not dodging the truth here. Jesus is hitting this thing, and remember, he's speaking to Jewish people on a Jewish mountainside with Jewish leaders about, you hypocrite. Take the plank out of your own eye before you try and help the speck in your brother's or your friend's eye. So he's spoken about matters of the heart, and now he's going, do you get what I'm saying? Do you understand physically how ridiculous what is going on in your heart is when you really look at it? When you see the truth is what's going on. And there may have been some people in the crowd before he told this story going, oh, he's talking about that person. There may be some people in the room going, he's talking about that person. And Jesus is going, I'm talking about you! You! Check your heart! I'm not pointing. The very fact that you're pointing at someone else is you having a plank in your own eye, pointing at a speck in someone else's. This is what Jesus is saying. He's saying, don't get comfortable. Don't start looking at that person thinking, oh, this sounds them. Because I've done that. I've gone, I hope this person's there. I hope they watch this on YouTube, because this is exactly what they need. Simon, Steve. But so often Jesus says to me, oh, but this is actually for you too, Sam. Quite desperately. So when you're listening to a sermon, I know it's tempting because I've been there to go, this is for that person. Can I ask you to look in a mirror and go, maybe it's for me? Last night I thought I was in a super spiritual place, right? We went to bed early, and she fell asleep. She's snoring like she always does, loud and really boring. And oh, it's just crazy. And she's not loud. And I was lying and I couldn't sleep, and I felt like God spoke to me. I felt like He gave me a prophetic word, and I felt like it was for a church what I'd recently spoken. And I was like, that's cool. I'm going to write that down. And I woke and I got on my WhatsApp and I was going to message the church leader and just say, hey, I just felt like a prophetic word. And someone had made a funny comment about football, and I just replied to the comment and just put my phone down. Didn't message him. But God knew what He was doing, because I woke up this morning and I was just spending some time in prayer, standing by the radiator, lovely and warm. And He said, that prophetic word was for you. And I replayed it in my head, and it attacked something that was so deep within me. It's like something that was going on so much over the past couple of weeks, couple of months, that I was like, man, I'm so quick, and we can be so quick to go, oh, this is for that person. This is for them. I'm going to look spiritual if I tell them this. And so often Jesus is saying, I want to speak to you. Can I tell you, if you're listening to Jesus, 9 out of 10 times He's speaking to you. People who prophesy 8 out of 10 to other people, they're hearing wrong things. I'm being brutally honest. When God speaks, He wants to speak 9 out of 10 times to you and your heart, and tell you about your identity and change you. So don't sit there and tell me, oh, God, over there, and then He wants to talk to that person, He wants to talk to that. You haven't changed in 4 years. Do you know what I mean? He wants to speak to you, and God will prophesy through you to other people, but mostly he wants to speak to you. Why? Because you're still his child too. You're still his child too. He still wants the best for you too, right? Man, that was nowhere near my nose, but that's okay. I'm coming back. So let me extend this courtesy to you. I'm talking to you. We're talking to ourselves. Let's look at ourselves. Why? Because judgment comes from a prideful, hypocritical nature that we all possess. It's not this person down the road. It's not that person sat behind you. We all possess this judgmental nature. So the greatest response to any issue, difficulty, challenge, or clash, anyone, I'm talking to every single person here, is this. How can I look more like Jesus? What do I need to apologize for? How can I recognize and take responsibility for my actions? In note, how can I take the plank out of my eye? That's what Jesus is saying. And this isn't for church. I'm not talking this spiritually. In your marriage, how can I recognize the mistakes I've made? How can I recognize the hurt I've caused? With your kids, in your job, with your boss. How can I take responsibility? Because I can't change that person, but I can change me. I can't take the speck out of their eye, but I can take the plank out of mine, because for sure it's there. And so Jesus distinguishes the difference between a judgmental action and a caring action. He distinguishes, he says, there's judgmental action and there's actual caring action. And the difference is this. Are you willing to humble yourself first? Because if you're so desperate to take the sawdust out of someone else's eye, you're doing it judgmentally. If you're not willing first to look at yourself and go, potentially it's in me too. Potentially it's in my heart too. Potentially that issue I see in them is in me first. Because let me tell you this, so as I've said before, we paint our care, our judgment through the lens of care. Oh, I just care for them so much, and I can just see them making so many mistakes, so I just need to tell them. And Jesus says, if you care for them, humble yourself, check yourself, come before me on your own, about your own heart, and then when that's taken care of, look what he says in the story. Let me take this. You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, comma, do that first, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. He's saying if you still want to help someone after you've checked your own heart, by all means go ahead. But if when you check your own heart, you couldn't care less about their change, you know it came from a judgmental heart. If you stand there and go, just keep swearing all the time, just call themselves Christian, just keep swearing. And you go, maybe my language isn't great. Jesus, I'm sorry. Do you know what? Yeah, I've let my tongue go a little bit. I've been gossiping. Jesus, I'm sorry. And then if you could care less about them, you never cared about them in the first place. It was judgmental, right? But if you're willing to humble yourself, check yourself first, and then you go, but I still care about that person, I still love them, and I still want to see their change in their life, but I've humbled myself first, then humbly go and offer change. Humbly go and say, hey, look, I love you, God's been challenging me on this as well. I just heard a couple of things. Do you know what I mean? There's ways of doing it, and there's a humble heart to be had when you share these things. And I think we can all remember a time when someone said they came and told us something because they cared about you. But you know it's because they just wanted to point out something that frustrated them about you, right? I remember preaching in a place and this guy just came up and he was like, hey, can I give you some tips? I'm not sure how much he cared about me, based on the fact that it was my first time at that church. He didn't know me. He knew my name. Can I give you some tips? Bang. 4 things he said. Not quite sure he cared so much that he just wanted to either look good or change something about me that he didn't like. There's a reality. But so how often do we do it to others? How often do we do it to others? And can I say this, as we sort of draw in towards the end of the story, Jesus isn't ignoring the need for change or the role in other people in our changing life, right? He's not saying you can never address an issue with someone else, because that's how we grow as a church, right? If we get to the point where, like, you can't talk to me, take the plank out of your own eye, you're just being judgmental now, so you flip the story on its head. That's the difficulty with judgmentalness, right? Being judgmental, because when you judge and then you can't take it, then you're being judgmental back. Come on, Jesus, make this easy for me, please. But there's an aspect we have to be willing to hear change from people. But if we're people then offering challenge or we're offering things, then we need to do it in a humble way that people are able to accept it. Does that make sense? I know I'm sort of going around in circles, but I need to be clear. We need to be willing to humble ourselves first before we go and challenge someone. Or not, I wouldn't say challenge, correct or help or support someone. But then when the same thing happens and someone comes and challenges and corrects and support you, are we willing to say, I believe maybe they've gone and taken that time in Jesus first, and I'm gonna just at least take this on board if I think it's wrong. Because all of a sudden then we fall into judgment if we don't. So Jesus is saying, don't not go and take the sawdust out of someone else's eye, just check your own heart first. So we are the greatest help that any of us can have in growing closer to Jesus. You aren't going to do it on your own. You weren't meant to do it on your own. You were created for community, you were created for this community, right? To grow closer with Jesus, you're going to need me and I'm going to need you. We can't just sit and be monks in a thing and just listen to holy music for 22 hours and then sleep for 2 and just think, I'm going to be like Jesus. No, there's something about growing and living and being, but then being willing to go, hey, I noticed this. Is everything okay? Can I help you? Can I support you? Can we read the Bible together? Can I come round you and help it? Yeah, that's cool. And I noticed this about you, and bouncing and struggling and that's my hardest job because I've got to do that sometimes. And I've got to say, hey, that's not how we respond. And can I ask you to trust me that when I have to have those conversations, I've checked my heart, and as a leadership, we check our hearts prior and after whenever we have those conversations. And we go, are we doing this right? We're checking our own hearts. And that's not a nice conversation to us to have. But we do it. Why? Because it's what the Bible teaches us. And we're trying to set an example for you guys to the best we can. So am I doing this humbly, carefully, honourably to help challenge or change someone? Or am I just projecting my own issues or insecurities onto this person? Am I being judgmental? So, to recap, Jesus uses a physical image to reveal a common heart position, particularly in Jews at the time. Religious, crack the whip Jews. That's what he's doing. And he's saying this, we judge. We think we're better, or more importantly, he's saying, you judge. You think you're better, you think you know more, you think you're more important, and God wants the complete opposite for his children. Because we've all been in a judgmental place, right? It's not nice. It doesn't taste nice, it doesn't feel nice, it's hard to go into if you've got a horrible work or home life is difficult. It's not nice. So what if the church today? What if we spent some time and stood in front of a mirror? Metaphorically. You can do it physically if you want, but metaphorically. And we said, you know what, we don't want to be known as a judgmental church, because I promise you if something happens in here, they're going to hear it out there, people are going to know pretty quick. So what if this church was known for being a place where it wasn't judgmental? Where we were quick to check ourselves, to humble ourselves, to look at ourselves and say, God, where am I? In fact, not where am I, where are you? Where are you in all of this? And that's the question. If you don't know how to sort of check yourself before Jesus, just say, Jesus, do I look anything like you in this situation? Would you react in any way similar to the way I've reacted? Would the words that came out of my mouth be anything like the ones that would come out of yours? It's a good first step to say, God, am I being judgmental? Am I pointing the finger? And just a final reminder, guys, judgment is a heart position. It's a heart position, so it has to be dealt with in your heart. You can't just say, I'm going to change what I say. You can't just say, it's got to be done here with Jesus. You've got to say, do you know what? I've been judging that person. Or I've been judging that family. Or I've been judging that place where people live. Or I've been judging Michaela for the t-shirt she's wearing. No, so that's where we're at. We've got to take stock. I wasn't going to be judgmental, I apologise. But we have to take stock. Guys, let's not take this in. We've got to take stock of where we are, because we can be bringing judgment on ourselves. Taking it back to that first thing, that first verse. The judgment you give is the judgment you receive, whether it's by human or by God. So where are we? Where do we stand in judgment. So I'm just going to ask you all to close your eyes and bow your heads. I don't think we need to necessarily have specific time of ministry for people to stand or anything. I think for us, as Jesus says, this is about you. This is about you. So as you close your eyes, don't be thinking, I hope that person really receives from Jesus. Think, I hope I really receive from Jesus. I hope Jesus changes a mindset for me about a person or a place. I hope Jesus changes something in my heart where I wouldn't just jump to a conclusion about someone before I even hear the full story. So Father, we just welcome your Holy Spirit because we know it's only by your Spirit we change. It's only by your Spirit that really things get done. And God, this is a difficult topic today. Why? Because we have to look at ourselves. Honestly. We don't get to pass the buck. We don't get to point the finger at someone else. Because the moment we point the finger, we know ultimately we're in judgment. And we're bringing it upon ourselves. So Father, we just want to stand holy and pure before you. We know that we do because of Jesus, but we want to live in a way that reflects the gift and the righteousness you've given to us freely. So Father, right now in this place, I pray that you would start to pour out your Holy Spirit to people's hearts. That there would be a posture of humility. That there would be a posture of non-judgment. There would be a posture of thinking the best and celebrating the best. Father, would you help us where we have to have difficult conversations? Check ourselves first. Would you help us look at our own hearts and our own motives behind things? And then, Father, when we do have to have those tough conversations, would you help us say the right words, that we would speak honourably and lovingly and caringly? Don't let things break down. Don't let relationships break down because we can't be gracious as we share this journey of growing more like you together. But ultimately, Father, we know that you are the judge. That's it. You're the judge and we have no right. We have no right to pour out judgment on others. You call us to care and to love and to guide and to support and to encourage one another. So Father, would you just break down barriers right now? Thank you for what you've been doing throughout this service. Thank you for our worship. Thank you for what you were doing in healing and in prayer. But right now, God, we want to see life change. God, I don't want to walk out these doors and be judgmental again. It's horrible for me. It brings judgment back on myself. It's horrible for that person, even though they don't know it. And ultimately, God, it's me putting myself above them. And Jesus, you created every single person on this earth. Would you help me to see that truly through your eyes? Help us to change the way we speak about people. Help us to change the way we think about people. And ultimately, give us your heart. So, Father, today, it's us. We look at us. We don't look to the left or to the right. We don't point fingers. We say, God, it's me and you. Change me. Change me. Change me. In your incredible name we pray. Amen.